Good evening, everyone. My name is Lindsay Fields. I'm a water resource specialist with the City of Lacey. Tonight we have Peter Brooks, who's the water resources manager with us, and he'll be presenting the information. We also have Scott Egger, who is our public works director, and Roger Dickinson, who is our wastewater maintenance supervisor. We also have John with us, who's on the technical side. He's our digital media production specialist. Again, welcome. Tonight, this meeting, we're going to be talking about the Tolmie, Park Estates septic to sewer conversion project, or proposed project, and then be talking about what a utility local improvement district is as well. And so we do have a Q&A box for questions. If you notice on your toolbar on the bottom, you'll have participants, and then the Q&A. If you hit that, you should be able to submit questions. I'll be keeping track of them. I'll be writing down any questions that are kind of community broad questions. If you have a very specific question for your situation, feel free to type it in there. We probably won't answer it tonight, but we will get back to you on a personal level to talk about those. So go ahead and submit your questions, or submit questions as they come up throughout the presentation. And with that, I think that's all we have for housekeeping. Pete, I'm going to hand it off to you for the presentation.
Thank you, Lindsay. Okay, so this first slide is giving you the agenda of what we're going to be talking about tonight. So we've just done the greetings. The next thing we'll talk about is existing neighborhood and your on-site septic system. Then we'll talk about the proposed sewer connection, financial considerations, and the Ulid. Ulid stands for Utility Local Improvement District, the Ulid process. A little bit about a timeline if the Homeowners Association wants to move forward. And then, as Lindsay alluded to, she will be collecting your questions, whether it's just, what did Mr. Brooks say there, I don't understand, or whether it's something more involved, like beyond the scope of what we talked about, but it's pertinent to what we're talking about. Lindsay will collect those questions and we'll address them at the end of the Q&A. So the existing neighborhood and the on-site system. So what you have at your HOA is what we call a large on-site sewer system. And we call that a LOSS, L-O-S-S is the acronym for it. So what I have a picture here is actually a single family home type sewer system. It's not exactly what you have, but it's very, very similar. So you'll see here that you have the home, and then when you flush the toilet or water goes down the drain from a sink, a shower, dishwasher, whatever, it first goes to a septic tank. And all the septic tank is trying to do is collect solids and retain fats. So floating things, you don't want fats to go down the system, and solids that can settle, you want them to settle out. What you want to move beyond the tank is simply liquid. And so then the liquid in a regular home, private single family system would go to a soil area where that liquid infiltrates into the ground, and the soil actually is the treatment mechanism. So as the liquid moves down through the soil, microbes in the soil attached to soil particles basically eat up the waste, and the water gets cleaner and cleaner, and hopefully is pretty clean by the time it hits groundwater. The difference between the system I'm showing you here in this cartoon and your actual system is your system has septic tanks on each parcel, and then they flow into a large collection system that goes to a large drain field, or what we're calling here the soil absorption. That's how your system works. The problem with your system, and I don't know how long it's been a problem, it might have been from day one, I don't know. But the problem currently with your system is the pipes that collect all this effluent from the septic tanks are very leaky, and you have high groundwater. So with high groundwater in the wintertime, you actually have clean water going into the pipe, flowing down to your drain field and saturating it. So the effluent is getting a bit diluted by that rainwater, but it is not able to soak into the ground. It just moves laterally with the runoff. And so you're not getting good treatment in the wet season. That's not a good thing. Your engineer manager of that septic system is doing such a good job trying to keep it running with whatever, I'll euphemistically say baling tape and or baling wire and duct tape. He's doing such a good job that the regulatory agencies are saying, well, as long as he's on the job, we'll just like let this go. They have told me that when he retires, and he is interested in retiring, he's one of the impetuses for proposing this solution to the problem. When he retires, the regulatory agencies well may say, okay, maybe we're not so comfortable anymore with the way this is operating. And they may want the homeowners association to take action to either spend money to upgrade the system or connect to the city of Lacey. So seeing that this is in the cards, the Lacey City Council said, let's try to help in some way because this is a surface water contamination problem. Okay, so now we're going to look at the existing neighborhood. So you probably know where you live. This dark purple here, this is the plat that became the Homeowners Association for Tolmie Park Estates. Notable things about it, which become something to consider in the future. Up here in this corner, there's a single family home that is not in the HOA. It fronts onto Hawks Prairie Road, but it also fronts onto Eagle Drive. And then down here, there's a big gaposis. These are 4 duplex parcels, not part of the HOA. So they have their own treatment systems, septic systems that are managing their waste. I have no idea whether they're doing a good job or a poor job or what. But the reason why I mention this is these parcels are fronting where the pipeline is going to go if you do this project. So there's 1 parcel there, and then there are 4, they're duplexes, so that's 8 more connections there. So there's a possibility there could be more than just Tolmie Park Estates involved in this project, but that's a separate consideration for the future. So, and then you can see the other things that are surrounding. There's Eagle Court down here, there's Lewis Place. It kind of gives you the lay of the land. Okay, this is the proposed sewer connection. So what we would do if you wanted to move forward with the project, we would put a sewer line going down the street, comes off of this court, comes off of this court, and this one continues on down to Raptor Avenue. And at Raptor Avenue, it dumps into this manhole. And from that point, it is now in the Lacey collection system. So that's generally how this would work. Now, a question you might have is, well, you said we had a collection system that was going to a drain field. Why don't you just use that? As I had mentioned before, that collection system is compromised and it leaks and lots of rainwater gets into it. So unfortunately, those pipes are not usable. So new pipes would have to be installed in the right of way, the street, so that we could have something that would actually be easier to maintain. Okay, so let's talk about some costs, because this is all about money, right? It's a construction project that takes money, so money is the consideration. So when I say Lacey, I mean the city of Lacey, the wastewater utility, and LOT. So LOT stands for the Lot Clean Water Alliance. LOT is an acronym for Lacey, Olympia, Tumwater, and Thurston County. Those are the partners in the Lot Clean Water Alliance. And I say this, you might know this already, but since many of you have lived in the neighborhood for a long time and you've relied on your on-site system, you haven't had any need for the city of Lacey or LOT. So this may be new to some of you. So what the city of Lacey does is we have a collection system, meaning wastewater from homes flows into our system and we convey it on down until we get to a connection point with the LOT system. What LOT does is they are the regional wastewater treatment agency. So LOT then has a small conveyance system, but they do all the treatment. They have a federal, state pollution discharge permit. They have to meet certain standards, all this stuff. So Lacey just collects lot treats. So you have to work with both organizations to get wastewater managed properly. So Lacey has a charge, right, for providing this service. So it's the Lacey GFC stands for General Facility Charge. And currently the price is $3,899 per, what's this ERU? ERU stands for Equivalent Residential Unit. So that would be a single family home or one half of a duplex. That's an ERU. Lot, they call theirs a capacity development charge. And that's basically a similar kind of a concept, but they have treatment capacity. So that's why they call theirs capacity development charge. And currently per ERU, theirs is $6,417.61. So when you sum that up, you get $10,300 plus for each connection. That's not exactly inexpensive. Then we look at the monthly sewer rates. When people become sewer customers, and if the HOA wanted to move forward with this project, you would ultimately become sewer customers. So it's fair to talk about what that would cost. Lacey's charge for just conveying, we have the pipes, we have to maintain the pipes. We have lift stations, without getting a lot of engineering about lift stations, how everything works. They're simply pumps. When you get to like a low spot, but you're not to the lot connection point, you have to pump over the top of the hill and let it flow again. So we have facilities like that. We have a number of things we have to maintain. So Lacey charges $23.04 currently per connection, single family connection, and lot charges $42.23 each month. These are monthly fees for treating the wastewater. So in aggregate, it's $65.27. Okay, so now what's the project going to cost if you were to move forward? So these numbers, don't memorize them. Don't say, oh, but you said in the presentation, this is what it would be. And this is recorded. So, I mean, you don't have to copy down. It's, you know, you can get these records. We'll make this available. But these aren't like the final numbers. This is, at this stage of the game, just to provide information to the HOA. Some of our design engineers just kind of roughed out, well, how much pipe are they going to need? And how many manholes are they going to need? And how many lateral stub outs to parcels for connections are we going to need? And all this sort of stuff. And based on that, they came up with an estimate of what it's going to cost. So this is an estimate. I'm hoping it's a high estimate. I think that's what we did. We put a contingency and made it a bit high. I wouldn't want you to see even higher numbers in the future, but these are just get you in a ballpark frame of mind of what could this possibly cost. Okay, so for the total engineering construction, about $2.4 million. And then the connection fees, remember I said those are inconsequential. That would be about, with the lot rebate, that would be $410,535. Now you say, well, hold it, you said that it was like 10,000 a pop, and there's 47, maybe 54, 55, something like that, connections. Why is it only that much? Well, it's only that much because currently lot will give 50% off of their connection charge, their capacity development charge. So when you credit that deduct, that about $3,000 per connection from each one, that's how that number comes out lower than it would otherwise have been. So in the subtotal, it's about $2.8 million. Then you have a city administration fee, and then you have a bond fee, and this is the bond interest rate. This is the setup fee for bond counsel and having the big banks market your bonds for you and this sort of thing. So you add those two together and you come up with this number, which is over $2.9 million. So from here forward, to make life simple, I call that $3 million. Okay, so I will explain what a Ulid is briefly at this point, so you have a little context going into this. A ULID is a utility local improvement district, and what it is a state authorized way that the public can get a project done under the auspices of a municipality or a special district. And in so doing, the special district runs the project for the neighborhood who needs the change. They need maybe water, in this case, sewer, whatever. And the municipality then bonds for that. They do the insurance, not the insurance, the engineering for it. They do the bid award, the whole state bidding process, low bid, that thing. They do all that, and the neighborhood just waits for it to get done and pays for it. It's a simple system. It is not the only way you could go. If you want to do this project, but you don't want to do a ULID, that is your right. You could be your own contractor in a sense. You could reach out to an engineering firm, have them design it for you. You could then shop around and get whoever you wanted to build it for you, build it for you. You do not have to do a ULID, and you could do this process without a ULID if you wanted to. I'm just telling you, since we're the city and this is what we can do to help, I'm telling you this is how we would do this. So that's the bare bones of what a ULID is. I'll get into more details of the process in a little bit, another slide. But that's what we're talking about here. So the estimated project cost, I said, was $3 million. City of Lacey City Council was briefed on this circumstance that Tolmie Park Estates is in. And they said, well, this is a water quality problem, and we would prefer that the HOA addresses it sooner than later. So in order to protect regional water quality, because the surface water, shallow groundwater that's making your system not work very well, it flows to Eagle Creek, which flows to Woodland Creek, which flows to Henderson Inlet, but the Puget Sound, that whole chain of waters, and we don't like to see it contaminated. So the city council said, we will pitch in $2 million. Okay. So then the amount to be financed by the ULID would be $1 million. And as we work through the numbers, you'll see that's huge. I mean, that's roughly 2/3 of your cost. So that's very generous of the city council to offer that. Okay, so then we say, well, okay, so the project for your cost will be $1 million. So if we take 47 parcels and we say the term of the repayment of this ULID is going to be 15 years, and we pick 5%. I think 5% is a high rate. I don't go out to bond market. It's not what I do. Our finance director has the experience with that. But I was seeing today a little promotional email I got from Zillow saying, hey, you could refi for as little as 2.2%. So interest rates are still pretty low. I think 5% is a high number. That's why I picked it. I want you to see high numbers at this stage of the game. So if you get sticker shock, you get sticker shock. I don't want to give you, unrealistically low numbers and you think, well, that's not too bad. And then when reality gets here, it's more expensive. So that's why I used 5%. It's a big number. The total assessment per parcel then, if you just, time value of money, you crunch the numbers and you come up with a little over $21,000 per parcel is approximately, again, don't say, oh, you said it would be. I'm telling you as an illustration, somewhere in the ballpark of $21,000. So then if you turn that's a 15-year period. And if you wanted to under the ULID and you had that kind of cash available, you could just pay it right then and there and be done with it. Okay, that is an option with the ULID. If you're not so well heeled and you'd have to make payments, then the annual assessment is just that 21 divided by 12, and you get $2,050. And you say, well, hold it. If I took $2,050 and multiply it times 15, I get like 30,000 and some. I don't get 21. Yes, that's the time value of money. That's why you'd want to pay it off right up front. You wouldn't want to get 5% interest for 15 years and pay a bunch more. But if you can't afford that, there's the payment plan. And the assessments, I think, are either annual or semi-annual. They're not monthly. But just to help people visualize it in your monthly budget, monthly, and this is just for the assessment. This excludes taking on rates and paying rates, which if you were connected to the Lacey system, you would be paying rates. Just the assessment would work out to be $171 a month. And you go, wow, that's a cut out of my budget. Yes, it is. But just think if it was 3 times that, right? It would be over $500 a month. That is the problem that you are potentially facing if you had to connect to sewer. That's what it would cost, and that's what it'd be. So the city council pledging $2 million to the project saves you a bunch. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about how this ULID gets formed, if in fact that is what you wanted to do. So the first thing would happen is what we're doing right now. You meet with city staff and you discuss your ideas. So staff have been doing that with your engineer manager, with your homeowners association management company, and with your HOA leadership. We've been talking a bit about, well, what can we do? How are we going to? So at this point, it's pitch the concept, see if people are interested. So that's what we're doing right now. And then the next step would be circulate a petition to the property owners and gather signatures. And city staff can help you with that. So what has to happen is we need to get a petition from the HOA with the parcel owners signing off saying, yeah, we would like to do this. And this isn't like 51% majority wins kind of a thing. The city council, as you'll see in a later step here, needs to approve this whole project. If they don't approve it, then it's not going to make it. And because there are steps to go through and people can get cold feet and back out, the city council would want to have a substantially high number. They haven't told me a number on this particular ULID, what they're looking for. But typically it's like 70, 80% approval is what the council is looking for, just to make sure that this is really something that the neighborhood wants to have happen. Not a 51% and then 49% hate the 51% because look how much money you're saddling me to pay. And yeah, we don't want to go there. We want this to be very broad, deep approval for doing this project. With enough signatures, so that's what enough means. I can't give you the specific percentage, but it's a substantial majority of the homeowners. With enough signatures, the petition is then taken to the city council, who can adopt a formal resolution of intent to form a ULID. So if this petition comes in with like 80% of the property owners saying we want to do this, that would probably be enough, and city council would probably move forward with this formal resolution. Okay, so that's another step. And all these steps are outlined in the state laws. So the property owners are invited to a public hearing to allow for testimony. So this is the formation hearing. There isn't a ULID yet. There's simply interest in the ULID, and the city council said, let's move forward. Then you have an actual public hearing, okay? The state and municipalities operating within the state of Washington are not allowed to just build stuff and send you the bill. That's not how it works. You have a say in whether this happens or not. So there has to be public testimony, a public hearing. So there is a public hearing, and this is why the city council is going to want that large number of approval, because at the public hearing, if they start hearing people say, I voted for it originally, but I don't want to do this now. I cancel my vote. If they hear a lot of that going on, then at the end of the public hearing, they are going to say, we're not going to proceed with this. We're not going to do it. This has happened, okay? There have been public hearings, formation hearings, where a large number of the public, we thought we were interested in the project, they said, we're not interested anymore in the project. And that ULID died. So that's a possibility, just so you understand that. No one's getting railroaded into anything here. Okay, if the hearing goes well and there's hardly anybody who says, I don't like this, and everybody else either doesn't show up or they say, yes, yes, we need this desperately, and it's easier to have the city do it than try to be our own project manager. If that's what goes on at the hearing, then the city council will probably decide to proceed with the Ulid. And once they do that, you actually have the district formed. Okay, it says, and construction can begin. It doesn't begin at that moment, okay? We would not put plans and specifications out to bid and select a contractor until we knew we had the district formed. So when it says construction can begin, it means, yeah, now we're ready for that next step. Now we can put plans out and all of that. That's why this whole Ulid process, we would like to, in time frame, we would like to see that happen this fall. If this is where you want to go with it, we would like that to happen this fall. Then next spring, we do the design, we pick our contractor, and then either late in 22 or in 23, we actually will do the construction. Okay, and then after construction, there's a hearing to discuss the final assessment costs for each property owner and any disputes or adjustments. So at the time that the Ulid is formed, we tell you an estimated cost of it, a better estimate than what I'm giving you tonight. Tonight is just to kind of get your brains wrapped around ballpark numbers. Something much more refined comes in at the formation hearing, but the actual assessed values aren't settled until we actually know what the actual costs we incurred in the construction are. When that happens, we have that final number, and that final number cannot be dramatically different than what we told you at the beginning. It can be more, it probably will be more because stuff happens when you're building. And that final assessment cannot be way out of proportion of the value you're going to receive for having sewer instead of your failing on-site septic system. So there are checks and balances in there about how that can go, but it's all specified in law, it's a process. I'm just kind of relating to you the general process here. Okay, so next steps. So what we're doing right now is we're informing you about this potential Ulid. It's an opportunity. It's one way you can go to solve this problem. My understanding is 19 of you registered for this. There's like 47, I think, in the HOA. That's the number I'm using. So that means less than half of you are hearing this information tonight. I would not expect anybody to vote yes for something that's going to cost you $171 a month additional unless you are well informed on it. So somehow we're going to have to get this information out to the rest of the membership so people can make an informed decision. I don't know what that means at this point. Lindsay and I will have to huddle and talk about, do we do another one of these? Do we simply post this on the website and advertise it through your HOA board to come take a look? I'm not sure. But I would like to have people get informed on it and make a decision whether they want to move forward and ask for us to provide you with a petition to fill out, say by middle second half of October. Okay, so if the HOA board determines there's enough interest and wants to proceed, we give you the petition. City of Lacey would like to have the petition by the end of October. And the Ulid formation is designed in 22 and it's constructed in 23. And with that, that's the bare bones to give you kind of the idea, the sticker shock of what this is. And I don't know if you've been sending questions in, but we're to that point. So Lindsay, do we have questions?
Yes, we do have questions. And just for those folks who came late, if you kind of take your mouse and scroll to the bottom of your Zoom, you'll see the toolbar and a Q&A, and you can insert questions there to be answered. I did mention that we're going to try and answer questions that are community-based and community-broad. If you have a specific situation or issue at your property, feel free to type that in there, but we will probably get back with you privately, phone call, email, something like that. And so just the first question I'm going to take, someone was having connection issues and was curious about a transcript. This is being recorded and the recording will be made available to all of the HOA residents, as will presentation material and our contact information for further questions. So then the second question, is if someone sells their house, does that monthly fee get transferred to the new homeowner?
Yes, it does. So what this becomes is a potential lien against the property. As long as someone's paying it, that's fine. If the house transfers ownership, the new purchaser assumes the remaining payments. Or I think often what title companies want to have happen is it just gets resolved at the time of the transaction. So whatever the balance is, typically it's like deduct that from whatever the value they agreed on of the house, and it's done. But again, this is a buyer and a seller thing, and they can work out who's going to pay off the rest of the Ulid. But I think that's the way it works. I think the new people don't actually get a stream of payments. They get it resolved one way or another at the time of the property transfer.
Great. So the next question, what is the time frame for completion of the project once it's started? And then there was a second part to that question, but you want to answer that first?
Yeah, so the time frame, assuming we get it designed in 22, well, first assumption is the HOA even wants to go forward with it. If they do, and we get it designed in 22, we have found one of the better times of the year to bid things is late fall. There's not a lot of construction going on, so construction companies start focusing on projects for the next building season. And so we would bid it then. And then as soon as the weather was conducive for starting to tear stuff up, I mean, if it's like February and it's a deluge, the construction firms often find it difficult for stormwater management to be operating then. They usually like to wait until April when it's not raining as much. Their trick is to get things ripped up, get the pipes in the ground, get everything settled down, and get your street repaved by the time rain start. Like this last weekend, we see just the first phases of rain starting. It's not serious. It's not like there's not still a paving window, but they certainly by mid or late October, they want to be done with the project, everything paved, and people don't have to have mud and gravel for their streets for the next winter. So that's generally the time frame that would be working.
Okay, and then the second part of that question is, what are some other options if there are not enough signatures to get the Ulid formation? And then kind of the end was like, what happens if the septic fails?
Right. Okay, so if there's not enough signatures to make the city council want to move forward, then Ulid doesn't move forward. The other options are the people who feel like this is necessary, the people within the HOA who feel like this is necessary. They need to talk with their neighbors and lobby them and say, well, what are we going to do? You know, the city's offered us $2 million to do this. We're going to say no to $2 million. How long is the city going to keep this offer available? It's going to fail someday, right? I mean, you always have the option to have some engineering firm design it to Lacey standards, have you, whatever construction company you want, build it. I mean, that is a whole nother route you could go down. And I can't speak for the city council. I don't know how long the offer $2 million is good, whether it's contingent on the Ulid or not. I don't know, but I do know they said, let's offer them a Ulid and pay $2 million into it. So if your neighbors don't want to do that, they don't want to do that. And I can't really speak to what you're going to do instead. I'm not clairvoyant, don't know what the future holds.
Okay. And just kind of alongside that, there's a question about the differences between the Capital City Golf Course Estates project
Right.
and then this project as well. So if you could just talk about that.
Okay. So I'm not sure exactly where that question is going from, but they're very similar.
Sure.
They're similar in the sense they're both septic problems. The Cap City problem was individual septics on lots, and many of them were failing. What was very different about it is those failing septics were contributing their wastewater effluent to a well that the city of Lacey uses for a public water supply. And had the contamination continued, it was rising over time, had it continued to rise to levels requiring treatment, then the city of Lacey would have been spending a whole bunch more money treating the drinking water supply to get the nitrate back out of the water. So that was the scenario there. The problem here is a failing wastewater treatment system, septic system. and it's contaminating surface water, the headwaters of Eagle Creek. So they're both water quality problems. One's going to make algae blooms in Henderson Inlet. The other one was going to cost Lacey a bundle of money to treat the drinking water.
Excellent. And so maybe you could just answer both. I'm not quite sure if the payments for sewer or if it's talking about the payments for the Ulid. Potentially, when would those payments have to start? I know the sewer would start. Yeah, maybe you could just explain both of those.
Okay, so at Cap City, the sewer connection happens at a point in time. Let's say it happened today. So then they wouldn't actually get registered in our system as a sewer customer until October 1st. And so they would have October's use of the service. And so at the end of October, that billing cycle, they get their first sewer bill. So that's how the sewer bills work. It all depends when you actually get connected and wastewater is flowing through our pipes and you're our customer now. So generally there's like a month and a half lead time-ish. You might get connected the day before the end of okay, you only get 1 month. You might get connected the first day of a new billing cycle and we missed you. And so you might get close to 2 months, but it's somewhere in that range is how that works. In terms of the assessments, after the final hearing where, the assessments are actually settled and people have that hearing to protest, it's way too much. You didn't say this, whatever people want to say. When it's actually settled, then that actually gets recorded. It's a lien potentially against the house. If somebody says, I can't pay, I default, I can't, I don't have that kind of money. Well, it's a lien against the property. When the property sells, Lacey gets its cut of the money to pay off the bond because the bondholders don't want to not get paid. So that's like almost immediately within a short time after that final hearing is when the assessments start.
Great. And to that end, how are overages during construction handled, and who's accountable for the final cost of the once the construction is done?
Okay, so the way these kind of projects work is we have a engineer's estimate for what the project's going to cost. We put it out for bid, and typically what happens is our engineer's estimate is somewhere in the middle. Okay, but we are directed to take the low bid, the lowest responsible bid. I mean, if somebody has never built anything like this before, or they're unable to secure a bid bond or things like this, right? They're just not capable of performing the work, then we can exclude them. But generally speaking, if they're in the industry and they know what they're doing and they can get people to provide the insurance of a bid bond and whatnot, we have to take the low bid. So that becomes the contract price between us as the manager of the construction contract and the company that is selected. Okay, so then they're supposed to build it for that price. Now, as you go through a project, sometimes you find things which were totally unanticipated. The plans and specifications did not say that you would have to dig halfway to China to remove obstacles or something. And so then disputes arise between the contractor. This is more than was anticipated. It's not fair, blah, blah. And there could be change orders for things that are legitimate. So the actual price paid could be higher at the end. It's typically not substantially higher. We're talking maybe 5%, 10% would be a lot. So generally the low bid price that we get at the beginning is pretty darn close to where the whole project comes out at the end. And then that price is what gets rolled into that final assessment hearing that decides what each parcel owner's proportional share is going to be.
Great. And then another question is, can the Ulid be extended from a 15 to a 30-year loan?
Probably not. Ulids are typically somewhere in the 10 to 20-year range. I mean, if the HOA had a strong preference for 20 years, then our finance director would listen and we could work through that. I don't know there's anything in the state law that prohibits it being 20 years, but they're often 15 years. just a little finance tip here, even though I'm a civil engineer, I'm not a business major, but the longer you finance things, yeah, the payments come down a little bit, but the overall amount you're paying for it, is, especially if the interest rates are fairly high, is going to be a lot more. So it might make it affordable in a monthly budget kind of a way, but you're paying a lot more for the whole cost of the thing. So keeping your term as reasonably short as most of the homeowners can afford would be the better way to go.
Great. And so how much or has development in the surrounding area affected their septic system?
I don't know that. I mean, that's something we hear. We've been out there looking at the problem before, and people say, oh, Raleigh May got built, and that's when the problem happened. I don't know that. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying in order to know that, you would have had to have a series of monitoring devices called piezometers. They basically measure groundwater level. You'd have to look at that, and you'd have to say, well, before all this other development, whatever that means, went in, this was the groundwater level. And oh, by the way, the on-site system was working just fine. And then the development happened, and lo and behold, look at that. The water went up 3 feet in the piezometers, and now it's flooding the pipes, and it's a problem. Not having that data, no one went out there and set up that piezometer field 30 years ago. So I really can't even comment on it because I don't have that data to know whether it had a significant effect or not. The way we run stormwater when we approve projects to be done is they have to manage their stormwater on site to the best of their ability. There's occasions when we let people cooperatively, developers cooperatively build storm facilities where they have to take some of the water off site and treat it somewhere else, but then they're buying more property for that wastewater, or excuse me, that stormwater treatment. So it's hard to say one way or another, but I know that, for example, Raleigh May had to manage their stormwater to the best of their ability on site, and they also shunted some of it off to a stormwater treatment facility where it could be retained and treated. So yeah, it's not really answering the question because I don't have the data to answer the question.
And I think maybe to that end as well, there's a question about how it's affecting their drinking water, but I think maybe they're on a community well, so I don't necessarily know we'd have that data as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember whether they're on the Lacey system or not. I do not know. I don't think this would be affecting your drinking water at this point, because part of the problem in this this region, meaning up in the Hawks Prairie north of I-5, is you have what we call till. It's a clay layer, and clays don't allow water to saturate in very easily. And then it's a clay layer that had a glacier sitting on it for a long time. Glaciers are rather heavy. And so it takes the clay and it compacts it down. So it's like impervious cement. And we call that till. So there are till layers all through the Hawks Prairie area. And that creates these little pocket wetland areas. And that's potentially the problem, is as soon as you get enough water sitting on top of that till layer, it doesn't soak in. It just keeps building up until it finally surfaces as wetland areas and then starts flowing on the surface away. So I don't know if that answered the question or not.
Yeah, and someone clarified that Thurston PUD manages their well, so maybe that's a question for them.
Yeah.
And so there's a question about the septic failing. If it comes to it and they find that the septic is failing and maybe it's contributing to some poor water quality, would the HOA be responsible for cleanup of Eagle Creek or any fines from the Department of Ecology and the city?
Well, okay, so there's 2 different organizations involved here, maybe 3. There's Department of Health, their wastewater group, and they're the ones who would be enforcing more likely than not. But there's also Thurston County Environmental Health, and I'm not sure if this system has been delegated to Thurston County Environmental Health. But one way or the other, the state or the county would be regulating, like, you can't have a failing system, you need to fix it. In terms of water quality violations, that would then be the Department of Ecology. All these agencies generally, what they want to see is not people fined. They don't want it going into the Daily Olympian, big bad government beating up on citizens. What they want to see is problems solved. So I don't know that there necessarily would be fines right out of the beginning. There would be conversations with the agencies of, here's the problem, what are you going to do about it? And then if the HOA was recalcitrant and unwilling to address the problem, then they would use their tools of enforcement. But that's not where they're going to go first. They're going to talk about, let's come up with a plan to solve the problem. So that's what we're doing here. This is one way, well, it's only one way, but it's one way that the HOA can solve the problem.
Excellent. And there are some questions about homeowners' dues and the organization. I'm gonna, Teresa, I know is on this webinar. I'm just gonna dismiss those questions just because we don't have any authority to speak about the HOA. And so one of the next questions is, can each individual property owner pay more on the assessment? For example, paying $10,000 down or upfront to lower the monthly cost on the Ulid.
Yeah, that's a more technical question than I know for certain the answer. I think the way it works is you get an initial bill, and the initial bill says pay all of it. In this example, it was a little over $21,000, pay all of it, or I elect to do the annual assessments. That's how it works. It's not like, oh, well, I have $10,000 free cash right now, let's just pay it down some. Yeah, and it's not like your mortgage where, you know, you pay your principal and interest for that month, then you pay another principal for the next one ahead, and you cut the whole thing in half. It doesn't work like that. It's like pay it all or go into the 15-year, say, plan.
Great. And then the next question, the project cost estimate, does that include decommissioning tanks on each lot?
Yes. So what this will look like is streets get torn up, at least half of the street, whatever side Thurston PUD has your water main on, we go to the other side of the street. We want to keep the two as far apart as possible. We go to the other side and we put the sewer line in, and then each parcel gets a lateral, which is basically a stub out to the property. So then we get out of the street and we can put a new street in, make it look nice and protect our precious utilities and the PUDs. Then the septic tank on the property needs to be pumped out and either filled with sand or crushed and backfilled or something so that it doesn't become a hazard for the future. And then the plumbing in the house is directed, and I think yours already go out front, which will be easier. In Cap City, a lot of the drain fields were in the back. So to get to the street side, we had to like turn the plumbing around and bring it out to the front. But since you already have it in the front and the pipe going out to your collection system is heading generally towards the street, it should be easier. It probably would not be conflicts with trees and shrubs unless they've been planted after the fact. But all that happens so that the end state is you flush, it goes into our pipe and flows into our collection system.
Awesome. And so another question is the 2 million from Lacey City funds, or where are those funds coming from?
Yes.
And then they also mentioned, okay.
Yep, it's coming from the city of Lacey, and funds have to be specific to what you're doing. So these are our utility funds. I'm not clear yet whether they're from the wastewater utility alone. That would be a possibility. But since it's contributing to fixing a stormwater or surface water problem, it could come from the storm and surface utility. But one way or another, existing ratepayer money is being used for this subsidy.
Excellent. A couple of questions about the same issue. We are in the Lacey UGA. Is annexation being considered as part of this potential project?
No. No one has said to me annexation is a consideration. Now, let's just talk about how annexation works, though. So I said no because it's not like deliberately link. This isn't like a ploy that city council will pay you $2 million if you accept this project, and then we're going to annex you. All right. But here's what you need to know. In the city ordinances, it says that before you can get a city utility, and you don't have any yet, apparently your water comes from the PUD and your sewer is your own. So you'd be getting a city utility. Before you can get a city utility, you have to sign a waiver of protest is one way it could be called. And basically what that says is when the city wants to annex you, they may soon, they may not, but whenever they want to annex, you don't get to vote no. You've already said, when you want to annex me, I am not going to protest. Consider it a yes vote. Okay. So if we did the Ulid and everybody, all 47 parcels get sewer service, in order as a condition of getting that, you're going to sign a waiver of protest. Maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years. I don't know when the city would want to annex, but whenever they get to that point, it's a fait accompli. There's no way you get to protest because you signed off on that. So that's the complicated answer then. It's not linked like we're doing it to get annexation, but annexation will be will be an ultimate outcome of it.
A few more questions here. Can each property owner just put in their own individual septic system?
That would be something that the HOA would have to figure out at a first tier before you could even approach the city of Lacey or Thurston County. So you have a system right now, and the Department of Health in Thurston County understands that you have the system. And if a homeowner said, well, I don't want to be a part of this anymore, this is going to cost me lots of money, I'm just going to like pay $20,000, $25,000 right now and have my own septic system. Maybe I could even use my tank. Maybe my tank's in good shape and I just need to find an area for a drain field. And then I'm not responsible anymore for this problem, right? If that's the gambit someone's playing,
locked up.
I think the HOA would have something to say about that. Because what happens when half say, yeah, we're out, we're putting in our own septic systems, and the other half say, what, are we stuck with this thing? And now there's only half of us to pay for a $3 million project, right? That doesn't look like it works politically. So that's an HOA decision, whether their HOA is even going to allow that to happen at first tier. And then we'd have to have the conversation with Thurston PUDs that it's a problem for their water system, with the county, with the state. Yeah, it's that would, but that's creative. I'll give someone credit for that.
Okay, and so if the homeowners petitioned the city of Lacey to annex before the project, would that give them more options versus a Ulid to get assistance? No.
Nope. Annexation has nothing to do with anything. I mean,
Excellent.
Some people's feelings are, oh, I don't want to be part of the city. I live out in the rural, and okay, I understand that. But what annexation simply means is, what jurisdiction are you a part of? When the police car shows up, is it Thurston County Sheriff or is it City of Lacey Police, right? When you pay your taxes, your property taxes, is Thurston County getting all of it or does Lacey get a little bit of it, right? That's what annexation means. It has nothing to do with your wastewater treatment stuff. The only nexus is, as I described it, is that there's this ordinance that says before you can get a utility service, you have to have the waiver of protest of annexation. That's the nexus. Otherwise, there is no nexus. Annexation is a completely different animal than utility services.
Okay. And we have about 3 more questions left. And so can other services be upgraded while the road has been torn up to put in new septic pipes? Yeah.
Well, the question would, and again, this is kind of hard in this kind of a format. COVID makes like things so interesting. Like it's kind of better being in a gymnasium and we're all just talking like folks, right? Instead of this sterile question and answer thing. So I don't understand the question totally, but yes, the best time to do anything with buried utilities is when the street's ripped up, because we don't want to rip the street up again for a long time. And in fact, since it's currently in Thurston County, it's not even our street. So we're going to rip up the county's road and rebuild it to county standards for the county. But there'll be these waivers of annexation, and so someday it'll become the city, so that's nice. But yeah, so the question is, we would coordinate with the Thurston PUD. Do they want to do work simultaneously on their lines? The lines can be replaced, upsized, whatever. We would work with them to make sure that that gets done. We don't want them having to cut the mat after we've just finished the mat, meaning the roadway, after we've just done that. We don't want that to happen. We would rebuild the road to the county standards. So whatever their standards are, if it's curb and gutter, then that's what we would rebuild. If it's not, whatever the standard is that the county would require of us. So in terms of stormwater utility, that's what we're going to do with regard to that. We would coordinate with others. Like there's a gas line in the street, you know, we'll do all those locates and let the appropriate service providers know what we're doing in case they have stuff they want to do. But that, I guess that's the answer to that question.
Excellent. And then, so just, are there federal funds available for this project?
Not to the best of my knowledge.
Excellent. And then there was another question about the next board meeting for the HOA. Obviously, we can't answer that. And then someone is curious about lodging a protest. I'm not sure the specifics of that question. It just says, where do we lodge protests?
Okay.
Not from the city of Lacey. Yeah.
Right. So the first step would be these people would not sign the petition. That is the first step. If you do not like this idea, do not sign the petition saying that you want to do this. If enough of your neighbors sign the petition so that it actually goes to the city council and they consider it, then when one point would be at that meeting, the city might take comments from the assembled audience or virtual audience, depending on where we're at in terms of conducting meetings at that time. They might take comments, and you certainly are willing to say, hey, I never signed the petition and I don't want this thing. You have a right to do that. If the council moves the project forward anyway and it goes to the formation hearing, that's when the person would show up, whether it's a virtual meeting or however, they would show up and say, I do not want this. So there's a number of steps for public input. But the first thing before somebody gets too exercised over this is just don't sign the petition if you don't want it.
Okay. And then we got two more questions that came in. And so it's about funding mechanisms as well. Would there be state funds available? And then they put in parentheses like HUD funds, and then also mitigation funds, question mark.
Yeah, not to the best of our knowledge. There have been a number of these kind of projects that have happened. Thurston County did one over in Woodland Creek Estates, and they were unable to get anything but loans. They borrowed, I guess, against some of their conservation futures in their county budget, and they took out loans. But in terms of the state or the federal government coming up with money, I wouldn't hope for it, put it to you that way.
Great. And then just a last call for questions. Yep, I think that's about it for questions. We had a couple more comments come in. And then someone asked their next step. I think just to clarify, the next step that would happen would be to decide whether or not to sign the petition.
Right. So there should the HOA leadership, the board, should at a soon meeting or through a newsletter, whatever mechanism they all communicate, should try to get the temperature of the membership and find out how much interest is there. And if they report back, or the hired manager reports back that there's a substantial amount of interest, please prepare a petition for us, then we could do that and they could get it circulated and back to us so we could see what those numbers look like.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's it for the questions. And just no, I'm not seeing any more questions. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll most likely maybe need to do another meeting just to, I'll get with Teresa and figure out another time, maybe next month or so that would work for everyone. Maybe a different date or something like that.
Yeah, day of the week.
Yeah.
Maybe some people, half are available on Monday and others are available on Tuesday. I don't know. Plus, this has been recorded, so we'll make this available.
Absolutely.
I could turn this stack of slides into a PowerPoint. Anybody wants that, I can disseminate that to people. It's a lot simpler than this, and then it can't be changed, at least not easily. So we can get this information out to people so people make an informed decision.
Okay, excellent. And sorry, we just had one really quick question. Will the city go forward, I think clarification, if there's a majority of signatures on the petition?
Well, again, I can't speak for the city council. They're the decision makers, but they have moved forward when there were a lot of, 70, 80% approvals or petitioners. So if that's what that question is implying, if there's large support, will the city move forward? My guess, just a guess, is that yes, they would. They've already said they would put $2 million towards the project that shows interest in it. So I think if the HOA reciprocates with a lot of interest, that it probably would move forward.
Okay, that's great. Great. And yes, I'll make sure I forward the recording as well to Teresa, and she can send it out to their listserv as well.
Good.
All right, I think that's it for everyone. Thank you all for attending again. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much.